right? So the other is assuming that, well, if you're a teen, you of course know all about this stuff. So you're the expert and, we should just sit back and let you do it. So I'm speaking partly as the parent of a transgender teen who totally considers himself the expert, but then every now and then reveals that, in fact, it's confusing and complicated. So I just wanted to unpack those things in first, being a transgender teen and wrestling with your identity is like being any other kind of teen and wrestling with your identity. And all of you have enormous resources, things that you've learned about how to do that. That teens, I think all human beings do this throughout our lives, but when you're a teen, you are figuring out who you are, who you can be, who you want to be, juggling multiple possibilities, and creating spaces where teens can do that safely, where they can explore possible ways of being themselves without having to lock in prematurely and without fearing that they'll be judged about whether they're doing it the right way or the wrong way, and without feeling like they have to focus on the essence of who they are, right? There's a lot of pressure in American society to figure out who you really are and be true to who you really are. And this pushes us to look for a kind of an essence, which I think is completely fictitious. All of those things are operative for transgender teens also. The essence thing is particularly an obstacle for trans teens because it's an identity which is not widely recognized, understood, or supported. I'm saying an identity, actually, it's a whole, there is no one thing that transgender refers to, so it's not even as established as that. But if you're a Jew, right? So if you're an American Jew in a safe and open environment, the way many American Jews have had the privilege of being, you can explore many different ways of being Jewish. Some of them can overlap, they can conflict, you can move among them. Your ways of being Jewish change as your life changes and your family changes and you have different experiences, right? That's what it looks like to have an identity that's important to you, but in a safe and creative and evolving space. When you're in an anti-Semitic environment, all of a sudden it's about essence and it's about binaries. You are or you aren't Jewish. You are Jewish the right way or you're Jewish the wrong way. You're hanging out with the right kinds of Jews or the wrong kinds of Jews. So trans teens mostly are not in a safe environment. So to one degree or another, if they're dealing with situations in which they may be attacked for themselves or whatever, it's very much like being a Jew in an environment where it's not safe, or you're not sure if it's safe to be Jewish. So you think a lot about essence, you think a lot about who's doing it right, who's doing it wrong, who's us, who's them. All of these are things that we do when we're anxious and trying to stay safe in dangerous situations, but actually they suck when it comes to unfolding who we are and growing into our best selves. So as with other teens, you want to create environments that are really safe for unfolding and exploring and enjoying the multiple possibilities of gender identity if you're a trans teen, including the multiple possibilities, which are that, like my son, as I said, just turned 17, knows everything, has forgotten more than I will ever know about pretty much everything. But so he's, for many years, he's been watching YouTube and engaging in this kind of popular discourse about transness and queerness and stuff. And recently he said to me, is it okay for me to be a trans guy and still enjoy feminine gender expression? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I was delighted that he could ask me that. And immediately, like, we were pretending that we didn't ask that question and he was not listening. But it was a moment of real vulnerability. And it reveals that although trans and queer teens are swimming in this kind of popular discourse and peer discourse, it's really unfiltered. And there are, it's like anything else. I mean, like, if you want to repair your own car and you go onto YouTube and you just start Googling around, your car may or may not run properly when you're all finished with this. You will hear conflicting things. You'll hear some people who are like semi-crazy and other kinds of stuff. So the other problem though is that there aren't answers about this. So being a transgender teen is like being Jewish, where nobody's really quite decided what it means to be Jewish yet. And what are the different ways? Are there different ways to be Jewish? Is there one way to be Jewish? Is there a right way to, right? So, what I said to my son was, of course, you're not going to go through the trouble of being transgender and give up parts of yourself. That's not what it's about. So one way of framing the trans teen experience for them without claiming to know them better than they know themselves is to say, this is about wholeness. Right? This is about wholeness and possibility. If you're identifying yourself as transgender, you're willing to color outside the boxes. That's great. But that means that you can support them in recognizing where they feel like they're pushed into these either or binary situations, where they feel like they're being judged and measured for in different kinds of ways, and enable them to negotiate that, because sometimes you need to do that, right? It's really not a safe world to be transgender. So being able to say, I don't feel safe right now, I'm going to trim down my gender expression or whatever for this environment and move into that. That is a terrible thing to have to do when you're thinking in terms of essence. You feel like you've betrayed yourself and maybe you've disappeared or dissolved. But when you help them have a sense of like, you will be the whole you, no matter what you do in one moment or another with your gender identity or your gender expression. That's okay. I think that that is a really good way to not do any harm and to support them. And the last thing that I would say is, because nobody is the expert on this, because gender is something we all do together, it's intersubjective. And our culture has not been living with the reality that there are many different relations to gender and identity than male and female. We haven't been doing that together for very long. And so you don't have to be an expert, and you want to make it clear that they don't have to be an expert either. They can wonder. They can entertain different possibilities. You can be a guide for their creative uncertainty about what this means for them and what it means in relation to other people, as opposed to freezing into the idea that there is somebody out there knows exactly what's going on here and the right words and everything. So you don't want to reinforce that sense in them. So, and last thing is, because there isn't, I don't know, like, the Strong Women Fellowship, I don't think anybody would tell the kids in that there's one way to be a woman. It's the right way to be a woman, right? Instead, you will want to hear from them. You'll want to invite them to talk about their own experiences, ask their own questions, reflect on their own lives and the ways that what they've passed through. Totally the same for trans teens. And again, because it's not safe to be trans and because anxiety makes us feel like we have to have an essence that we defend and say, no, we're exactly the same at every moment, offering them a safe space to just wonder aloud and think and reflect. Like my son allowed himself for that one moment with me, but of course he'll be a lot better than a parent. What a nightmare! But that is, I think, an incredible gift, and it's something that I don't think trans young people get in a lot of the corners of this culture. I think it's really hard to find. So I wanted to stop talking now before I burn through all of our time and hear what you're thinking or wondering or.
So that was amazing, and I want to open it up to questions. I think Joy definitely proved herself wrong. She definitely can do a lot of depth in a short period of time. That was really amazing. But I would love to open it up to everybody, anybody, if they have a question, um, anything you want to bring. This really is, we're trying to promote conversation. So we'd love for people to unmute and join the conversation.
Uh, I wrote down, I love the term creative uncertainty, which really is helpful to me as a person who somebody would look towards for guidance. And this, you said, the safe space to wonder aloud, because I like all of what you said. Like, we haven't been together in this environment of learning about trans teens and the language and the etc. So the idea that I can share with a teen that I am creatively uncertain is freeing, because they come to me, and or any of us, I mean, I'll speak for myself, they come to, someone who's a leader and a trusted adult, and then I feel like I need to know what the answer is. Am I saying the right thing? Like, what should I point? So I love the freeing terminology, being creatively uncertain, because if we do have this relationship with one another, then we can work as a trusted, in this trusting relationship through our creative uncertainty. So I appreciate that.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you. Always a pleasure hearing you speak. But also, I really appreciate the idea of wholeness and the components of trying to sometimes figure out who we are, and also recognizing that that is a mysterious truth that is very unlikely. Right? Like, we think about, when I grow up, like, but what does that actually mean, and who stops growing up? So I just really appreciate that perspective.
Thank you. As I was talking, I was thinking who we are who are you is a question that scares the crap out of me. That's like the Yom Kippur question. So it's supposed to scare you, but who can I be? And who do I want to be? Feel like they are much more of the creative uncertainty kinds of questions.
Does anybody else have any thoughts or any questions for Joy while we have her here?
I have been privy to a lot of Joy, and I highly recommend all of her work. But I'm really think your memoir, to me, is so authentic in that uncertainty of who we are, and for teens, it's just it could be broken down as a book club, or just I think but really, like a very strong relationship with God that you've had, but all the questions that surround the people that you have to interact with on a daily, and the questions that we have within, and the evolution of a human, it's just a really great opportunity to plug your work, but that it is applicable to the growth of the teens that we are all working with.
Thank you for that, Rebecca. Rebecca, can you just say a word about the things you guys are doing locally for teens while we are having this conversation, just for everybody on the call to hear some of the things you guys are doing?
Sure. So I'm with Sojourn, the Southern Jewish Resource Network for Gender and Sexual Diversity, and we have a teen group, thank goodness, sponsored by Jump Spark, called Tum Tum. And tumtum is a term that has been used in the Midrash and the Talmud and the Mishnah of one of the gender identities that is commonly unknown. What is really interesting to me is that our teens continue to use the term, even though in modern Hebrew it's known as stupid idiot. But they wanted to reclaim it and you know, sort of like a more justice oriented way in which to meet on a weekly basis virtually right now, and doing periodic projects. And you know, anybody can be on virtual from anywhere now. So we have had some really great conversations across the country with teens, and so I put in the chat, you know, when you type, it just sometimes sends on its own. So tumtum.atl on Instagram is the best way to communicate with our group. Thanks for the opportunity to be here again with Joy and to share with y'all.
Awesome. So one of the goals of this is to kind of inject some new thoughts in your day. And I know that I definitely have some new thoughts after just hearing Joy speak, but it's also to let you guys know about resources that are out there. Joy is an amazing resource. Like I said, she came and she spoke to the Strong Women's Fellowship through Sojourn, and it really was a really incredible evening. Joy, do you want to say how people could find you, see more things that you're doing, posting, so if they want to be in touch or learn more about you, they can?
I'm also, so I'm happy to be a resource, and you should never hesitate to email me at joyladin@gmail.com. That's the best way to get to me. I don't do social media in any sort of good, you know, fluent way, but I have a Facebook page. I accept friend requests. I do check for messages and things like that. I post things that I like, links to things that I've done. I often feel embarrassed to post things before I've done them, but sometimes I'm, you know, like as inviting, but I try to make myself do that from time to time also. And I have a web page which is poorly maintained, but has a bunch of links and things on it. It's at joyladin.wordpress.com.
Thank you so much. And I hope all of you enjoyed meeting Joy and learning more about her and all the wisdom that she has to share in this space. And I hope if you need any support around this or any ideas, like she said, please do not hesitate to reach out to her. So we're going to transition now. So Joy, you can sign off if you would like. Thank you so much for joining us. It is always a pleasure to connect with you.
Thank you all, and bye-bye. Stay safe.
Bye. So we're going to transition. Hopefully you guys can hang out for a little bit longer. Annie is going to put you guys into breakout rooms. I'm not exactly sure how she arranged you, but I'm sure you will be met by wonderful smiling faces. Just as a chance to do some networking, right? We've been sitting on mute. Just a chance, you don't necessarily have to debrief the conversation we just had with Joy, or if you want to, that's fine. Also, just what's going on, just really connecting the part of the meeting that we miss out on, the hanging out with people part. So we're just going to send out into breakout rooms, and then we will come back together and we'll share out if there's anything you want to share out with that either came up in your conversation or just things going on with yourself or your organization that you want to share out in this space.
All right, we're in